People might squabble over if Oscar Isaac, Ryan Gosling, or Chris Evans is the internet's latest boyfriend, but Paolo Montalban owns the title of being the internet's and an entire generation's Prince Charming. I spoke with Montalban a few days after the 25th anniversary special for Cinderella aired on ABC. We talked extensively about what made the film an enduring classic, as well as how it inspired both Montalban and myself.
I think in many ways that's going to be one of the lasting legacies of the Cinderella, is that it wasn't it was not only for young black girls to see an empowered, also young black girl making her own decisions and taking charge of her life. It reached other ethnicities. It reached other underrepresented groups, and it gave them courage. I know a lot of people who've come up to me and said that, for instance, that they had their, what's the word? They call it a sexual awakening, but it's almost like it's not like sexual awakening, like sexual awakening, but it's like where they knew at that point, like, oh my goodness, maybe I associate more with Cinderella, and I'm a male or male presenting, and it's this feeling is okay because there's a feeling of acceptance throughout the movie, and like finding that acceptance in you. I don't know. I want to get too like woo about it, but I just think it's such a beautiful kind of side benefit that we got from the movie. I think, is empowering to young black women. It was empowering to young Asian men. How many times have I heard that? I'm I've heard Asian American guys come up to me and say, I never thought that I could be the leading man in this story. And when I say story, it's not the Cinderella story, but like my life story. They can only see themselves as a supporting character, and we should all go through life with movie lead energy, right?
Right.
Because it's our lives.
Right.
Go boldly forward.
Right. Like that has been literally what I've been thinking about for the past I don't know how long, is that well, I only have one life and like I gotta either like shape up and like, live that life, like how I need to live it, or um I can't I have to be the leading person in my own life. And it's so interesting how like you don't think you can do that if you don't have examples in front of you. And just to like just for the examples are just for you to know that I have this within myself. And so it's just like it's interesting how what's supposed to come from you you can't see until you can see other people who look like you and act like you do that. And so it's just a lot of things that come up with this movie, I feel like.
Absolutely. And I don't want to be mean about it, but even the fairy godmother, in her own kind of gentle Whitney Houston way, says no one's coming to save you.
Right.
You have to take control of your life. You have to you have to decide what you want your life to be, and take that risk. And gosh, it's actually a really good lesson to be reminded of myself, is that the reason why there are people who stand out in our society is because they are the example, and they had no example before them.
Yes.
Right. So they took the risk. They took the leap, and they became the example. what if we did that with ourselves on a daily basis, even small little decisions, right? Just as
Mm-hmm.
long as it's not physically harmful or mentally harmful to ourselves or to others.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we took those risks, large and small, and we
Mm-hmm.
could become an example to somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, awesome.
A part of the interview got very personal for me. While it didn't make it into the final edit, I explained that for me, as someone with OCD and depression and anxiety, seeing someone like Cinderella, who also seemed neurodivergent, encouraged me. After Montalban heard my story, he thanked me for my vulnerability and said that my story could inspire others who are like me. I think our conversation about that cemented one thing for sure: you can be your own hero. Cinderella helped me accept my neurodivergence. Montalban's role as the prince has helped Asian men see their worth and has helped inspire people of color in general. But even without these examples, we have the power to be our own inspiration if we have the courage to trust ourselves and our voice. This theme will run throughout the interview, which I'm excited for you to hear. So take a listen and tell me what you think about the interview in the comments. Thanks. So today I'm talking with Paolo Montalban from Cinderella. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Monique.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you. As I'm sure you've heard from everybody who has seen Cinderella, that you've been such a huge influence and such a huge icon in their lives. With the film being at its 25th anniversary that was just celebrated on Tuesday, what has it been like for you to look back and see how the film has impacted other people and how it's impacted you?
Um, well, it's your question actually affects me both ways. So I've
Mm-hmm.
actually seen how it's impacted people over the years, and their response to it when I interact with them has affected me. So first and foremost, and I mentioned this in an interview last year, and I reread the interview, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally said that, and he, and totally meant it at the time. Still mean it now. Having done this Cinderella opposite Brandy has opened up a relationship with the African American community that I never would have had.
Mm-hmm.
A closeness with that community that I never would have had.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel so blessed to be able to step out into the world. And yeah, I'll be honest with you. Most of the fans of Cinderella who approach me in public are from the African American community, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just over the moon um, about Brandy's involvement in the film and Whitney Houston's involvement in the film, and the diversity that's been represented in the film. I think, it was a really big step forward for our country in general,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as far as representation.
Mm-hmm. Um, for me, the film was like hugely impactful. I did the math the other day, and I was like 9 at the time, and
Oh my goodness, Cinderella math.
and so I remember like watching. Uh, actually, me and my sister Ashley were just talking when we were watching it on TV on Tuesday. We were like, even if it just ended at Whitney Houston introducing it, it'd be like, oh, this is amazing. But like, just the fact that the entire movie uh, was unlike a lot of what I had seen growing up. Um, I think I was fortunate enough that at the time in the 90s there was like a black renaissance in TV and film where you have like movies like Soul Food and shows like Living Single and um
How
uh
Sally got her groove back.
yeah, How Stella Got Her Groove Back. Um uh the preacher's wife, like all that stuff was out there, so I could see myself, and like Family Matters and things like that. A different world, like on and on and so forth. And so like I was able to see myself generally, um, just through the fact that there was a ton of representation of just black people in general. But I
Right.
felt I felt like there was like not specific representation of like who I was, which was like uh, kind of a neurotic, like still neurotic, like kind of introverted, introspective, sheltered, kind of like someone who's like within themselves and they're kind of timid, but they know that they have a lot to offer the world and to themselves. And so I felt like that kind of specific character was something that I found in Brandy, even down to like her having braids, which I had braids at the time too. And so like um all that really like hit home for me in that specific way.
Mhm.
So that's my personal story about how I connected to the movie, and just like seeing you on screen, I was like, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen this, type of Prince before. Like even in the regular, uh, not regular, but like the original, I should say, Cinderella, you have um, who's usually put as the prince, a white man as the prince, and like in so many Disney movies before these new batches of Disney movies came out, you would have uh whiteness kind of drilled in, that this is what a princess is like, this is what a prince is like, and there's no difference. And so suffice it to say, this movie, this version of Cinderella really hit home. And I think that's why it hits home for like a lot of black youth, a lot of black girls, a lot of black girls who are women now, because there's still like not there's a lot, but then there's also not enough, if that makes sense. Like there's not like it's interesting. I guess I'll just end it at that. It's just that it's really interesting that there's still not that level of diversity in character, not even just in skin tone, but just in character of like black people. Like black people are still defined as the sassy girl or whatever, and they're still not this I'm a I'm a person who doesn't know who I am type of black girl, and I feel like that was represented in Cinderella for me. So that's my connection to the film.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful that, like, as you say, in many ways, we're just at the beginning of the work, aren't
Hmm.
we?
Hmm.
Right? We're just at the on the precipice of something truly great, where our racial ethnicities aren't just being portrayed on in mainstream media, but they're being portrayed in a wide spectrum
Hmm.
of characters
Hmm.
within our ethnic backgrounds. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
As so to your point of the fact that it doesn't play necessarily into the tropes
Hmm.
of of it. Like, so for instance, maybe the Asian gangster,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's like a kind of a very kind of typical trope that I personally only saw when I was growing up, and
Hmm.
even around the time that Cinderella was shot. That was, I think we're on a good road, a good
Hmm.
road ahead.
Hmm. So I wanted to ask something that I don't think has been asked a lot in the interviews that I've read when I was
Hmm.
preparing for this, which is like, what was your start in Broadway? Like, how did you realize, oh, I want to be a singer and an actor?
Oh, now are you asking professionally, or is just something that I really enjoyed doing?
Well, I guess it's both. Like, what gave you, uh, what made you think that I can do this as a career?
Oh, um, well, the okay. So the first time I thought that I could do this as a career was actually when I booked my first job. So I had started doing musicals in earnest, not by accident or not as a part of a school play uh, that everyone had to do. So my first school play was in second grade. The Jesus Christ Superstar. There were like 10
Mhm.
Jesuses, and I tag team Jesus. But in high school, I actually auditioned for plays and musicals. My first musical was my freshman year. My voice hadn't changed yet, and I was cast as Oliver. So I guess you could say that even early on, um, I I was playing non-traditionally cast roles just because there weren't any. We I don't think that we would have done The King and I in high school because first of all, it's an all boys Jesuit prep school and it requires a lot of kids. I
Hmm.
mean, like toddlers and baby kids, you know what I
Hmm.
mean, to play the children. Um, so we had never played that. Miss Saigon hadn't come out yet. Uh, so I was playing roles that were traditionally white roles.
Hmm.
Curly in Oklahoma,
Hmm.
or the Padre in Man of La Mancha.
Hmm.
Um, and in college, I started doing plays and musicals again my senior year. My senior year, it was the last musical I was in. An agent from New York came down to see uh, actually the conservatory students at Rutgers over at Mason Groves, but he ended up catching the play that I was in, or the musical I was in, and he approached me afterwards and said that he wanted to sign me, or he asked me if I ever thought that if I would ever want to be an actor professionally, and at that point I didn't think that you could make a living.
Hmm.
I didn't know any working actors, you know.
Hmm.
Actually, I didn't know any professional actors at all back then, except for my teachers at
Hmm.
school. Um, and so I signed with them and auditioned for something right after I got out of college. And like 3 months later, I was on a national tour of Men on Mancha.
Wow.
So that was my first professional paying gig. And 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I was doing The King and I on Broadway.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. That sounds like very life changing also for just this agent to just come down and it's like, oh wow, here's this opportunity, and now here I am on Broadway, like 2 years later.
Yeah, obviously, it didn't like pop on Broadway.
Hmm. Hmm.
There were a couple of gigs in between, things that that I learned the ropes of the business in. Um, but yes, it was essentially like I don't know, a guardian angel came down and said, whispered into the agent's ear and said, "Why don't you give this kid a shot?"
Well, that sounds so cool. And clearly it has worked out because you're still a mainstay on Broadway, on stage, and now you have this film that we're talking about, Cinderella, and like other projects that are coming up. So like great that it's really great that you've been able to like I guess have this platform get to this place because like um I'm sure people have like told you before, but like you're extremely talented and like the
I'm also extremely lucky and extremely blessed, probably more blessed than lucky. My mom says a lot of prayers for me, so I think that counts for a lot. But thank you.
no problem. So the first day of filming Cinderella, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if this was brought up in any of the other interviews because I did like read a lot of stuff to prepare for this, and so one thing I've always wanted to know is like what was it like just that first day of like getting on set and starting this whole journey?
Oh, it's interesting that you bring that up. I guess usually my experience for first days of we call it the first day of school, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like when you meet everyone, you get there and you meet everyone, and it's like a giant meet and greet, essentially, at least in the theater world.
Hmm.
So it's not just the cast and the director; it's the cast, many of the department heads, sometimes the entire theater staff. Um, the production crew, the producers. So there's usually a lot of people in that room the first day of rehearsals
Mm-hmm.
for the meet and greet. This was my first movie. This was my first TV experience, and I guess things work differently. I've learned that things work differently in that world because you don't get to meet everyone
Mm-hmm.
at the same time on that first day. So I think the producers were there, Neil Marin, Craig Zaid, and Deborah Martin Chase. They were there to kind of like smooth the transition and get us excited about what was going on. And what's really interesting is that there it was, I believe, the first day of rehearsals. It was just me and Brandy and Leanne Cox and Natalie DeSalle Reed
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even Bernadette Peters by that time. They didn't have King and Queen locked in yet. Um, and then Whitney was working on other projects. I think, I don't know if you read it on some of the interviews or heard some of the interviews. We actually didn't have her on set or in rehearsals for much of the process. Because she was busy with her other stuff. She was, being Whitney Houston. So there wasn't that like sense of nerves that you get on the first day of school, I guess, because it was Brandy who I'd met before at the chemistry read, and and we were just reading through our scenes together on that day. So it was a lot of fun. Totally no stress, totally stress free. It's really great.
Well, that's cool because it seems like the entire production, like at least it seems like with the main cast, it seems like there's like a huge sense of camaraderie that can be felt throughout the film. Like even though there are heroes and villains and things like that inside the show, it's still like you can tell everyone is like pulling together to make this the best it can be. So um, I feel like that plays through the film. If that was how it felt on set, then that's what came across also to the audience. And I think that's another reason why the film is so beloved because it seems like everyone who had a part in it was really, you know, really trying hard to make it the best it could be.
I'm so glad that you noticed that because I felt that on set every single day and every single rehearsal. It's a really, really rare experience to have when you have that immense sense of goodwill from everyone involved in the show. Like you said, really wanting it to be the best that it could possibly be. I mean, a lot of that, of course, comes from the top. I always say that it always comes from the top. And our executive producers, our director, our choreographer, they were essentially the aces, the kings and the queens at the top that trickled down to the rest of the cast. But never once did we need like a pep talk or anything like that? Or do you know what I mean? We never had a pep talk. I think we all kind of understood inherently that this was going to be something special if we worked to make it special. But it had that potential.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it certainly did. And like it really pops on screen. Like it really does like make its statement about like this is what this is. And I just think it's great.
It's great. I think what you're feeling, and I just thought of it now because it's something that I feel every time I see it, and certainly when I see it with other people, is that you just get this general sense of love coming off the screen. You know what I mean? Just right from those the opening notes from the orchestra and Whitney like appearing, with her and her special effects and her gown and floating in the clouds. you just get that, you just get a sense of love um, from the piece.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just kind of struck me right now.
And one thing you said earlier in the Broadway question, when you said that you were like tag team Jesuses with other kids, that I remember you saying that in the Rosie O'Donnell show episode that you and Brandy and Bernadette Peters were on. And like that's on YouTube now. People have like uploaded that on YouTube, and so I was watching that, and one thing I have to say is that as a huge Whitney fan, like, um, and this is no shade to Rosie O'Donnell, but I'm just glad that you said, enough of enough of Whitney slander on because she was like wanting Whitney to come on that episode and she couldn't for whatever reason, and so I was like, I'm so glad that you like tamped that down after all that stuff, but like, um, uh, that's just me as a Whitney fan being like, thank you for doing that.
Oh, did you see the actual? Did you see the episode when Whitney did come
Yes, I
back
did.
on?
Yes,
And she sang the roof off.
yes,
So I think maybe in many ways it was good that she had her own episode because like
right, right.
first of all, then I also wouldn't have been able to appear on the show, so I thought that was like well, appear to be interviewed. So that was a really special treat. So
Mhm.
thank you, Whitney, for that moment. That was really sweet.
And speaking of that episode, the audience got to see you and Brandy perform. Everyone in the comments under that YouTube video was like, "Oh my gosh, you look so great! Oh my gosh!" And so it's like, it seems like that chemistry that was from the film like came over into that performance, and so that leads me to asking, what was it like to work with Brandy and to create this like magical like fantasy romance world that like everyone wishes they could have.
Um, what was it like to work with Brandy? That is such a loaded question because I could be here for hours talking
Mm-hmm.
about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is it like? Do you know when two people don't really know each other that well,
Mm-hmm.
but they hit it off right away? Not necessarily romantically, but they just hit it off right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's like an instant mutual admiration and respect for each other
Mm-hmm.
without having earned it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Brandy and I had that when we first met and when we first started working with each other. Maybe that's what they call chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But over the course of the rehearsal period and the pre-records at Capitol Records and for the vocal tracks and actually shooting it in the studio, that mutual admiration and respect gradually gets earned and it becomes solidified because of your experience around that person.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you from my end that here's this young woman who I don't know if she was ready at the time, but certainly around the time of her album, she was nominated for 2 Grammys,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she had her own hit TV series, Moesha. She was carrying all this responsibility on her shoulders, and now she's starring in she's the titular role of
Mm-hmm.
of Cinderella uh, in this huge kind of like role. We didn't know how big it was going to be. I didn't. Maybe they did. And she held it with such grace. She held herself with such grace. She never she never had a breakdown. She never had a freak out. She always had a really good head on her shoulders. through the entire experience. And she
Mm-hmm.
did her work, and she worked hard. She was present, and she was fun. And she was
Mm-hmm.
funny, and she liked having fun, and she's fun to be around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I look forward to coming to work every day, and I look forward to working with her every day. The one thing that I wish I had more time of was like downtime when we were shooting or when we were rehearsing, because once her rehearsal was up, her scenes were up, she'd be whisked off
Mm-hmm.
to attend to something else. So in many ways, I didn't, get to like really get to know her
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Um, but then, there were some moments like we would like, have sit down and have lunch, have burritos or McDonald's or something like that, and we'd learn about each other's lives. Um, I loved working with Brandy. I would work with her again in a heartbeat. I would recommend it for anyone, any director, any actor, any producer. Work with Brandy. She's the real deal. I mean, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that strikes off one of my questions that I had written down, which was that if there was a Brandy project that had like a role that had your name written all over it, would you take it? So I guess the answer is
Absolutely. I would do it for free. I would do it for scale, depending on what my union would allow me to do. They could pay me whatever they wanted, or pay me not at all, because yeah, I just want to work with her again. It'd
mm-hmm.
be so much fun. It'd be so much fun, like a little reunion on
Mm-hmm.
set. That'd be great.
Uh,
Or like a song or something.
mm-hmm. That also brings me to one of the big moments from the 25th anniversary special that I don't know if I guess you could say it's viral. That got really popular was when you were describing what it was like to film. I guess the beginning of the ballroom scene where like Cinderella comes down the steps, and you were saying how basically how overwhelmed I guess that you got from that moment. What was so special about that moment for you?
Um, well, what's actually really interesting, because I remember saying that in the interview, and the only reason I remember saying it is because after I said it, I got so choked up that we had to stop recording
Oh,
because the cameraman said he's got tears in his eyes. He looked like he's crying. Um, so I'm sorry. What was your question again?
I was saying what was it about that moment that was special for you?
Yeah. So what exactly did I say about that moment?
You
It was
said
about putting
that
in perspective, like
that your
when I
breath you lost your breath.
yeah, yeah. So when I first see her at the top of the stairs, I it's like I can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Like the breath has been knocked out of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when she walks down the stairs in the silence, in the dead silence, walks down the stairs and she gets to the base of the stairs. Oh, I remember it. It's like coming home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it was. I did talk about this in the interview. It was really smart of uh, our director, and I guess the producers as well, for the most part, to try to shoot as much of the movie in sequence,
Mm-hmm.
the sequence of the events, which often doesn't happen, which often doesn't happen in movie making, right? The
Mm-hmm.
scenes are shot all out of order, depending on what location is available. But by the time we had done the ballroom sequence, it had maybe been about a month since the time that we'd shot the first sequence where Cinderella and the prince bump into each other in the market square, the village market square. Um, so when she, when she comes down the stairs, there's that feeling that I've wait a minute, I've been in the presence of this person before, and this person has made me feel comfortable and special and seen before. And so when she comes down to the bottom of the stairs, it feels like I'm coming back home to that, coming back
Mm.
home to that feeling.
Mm.
And for me, as an actor, it didn't feel like I was acting at all because uh, it was just a real feeling there of coming home. And when she came down the steps,
Well, I will say, um, that that's the kind of reaction that like every woman wishes they could have on a man, on their significant other, on whoever that they're trying to impress. Because like, I think that's like one of the reasons why that clip from the special like got so popular, because like so many times, like I think also especially because going back to what I said about it being about a black woman at the center, like so many times that isn't said about us, to be blunt. Like,
really,
yeah, like, uh,
why? But black women are the. I mean, let's be clear and let's be real here. They are the life force of 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 their families. Many times they help hold them together, and sometimes in some cases they are the only parent in
mm,
that situation. So that kind of inner strength, I feel needs to be, and grace needs to be more represented and portrayed in in media. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, it's it's portrayed it's portrayed in a way that like oh, what was the word I was about to use? I think that trait, which that it is very admirable and it is beautiful in its own right. I think that trait is often like pathologized in media, to where it's like, well, of course they have to be strong because of X, Y, and Z, and well, they were made that way uh, because of like well racism, because of all these ideas that like taint who a black what a black woman is. It becomes to where these admirable traits, um uh, uh, the beauty of a black woman, even her body, becomes like
Oh
um
yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole nother that's a whole
right,
nother deep story back there, isn't it?
right,
Right.
and it just becomes like what's like a good word? It's like it becomes
Fetishized,
stereotypical.
or
Yeah, fetishized, exoticized, objectified. Um, all of the academic words that you can like use for that. It becomes that instead of like just appreciation and admiration. And or you know, or just like straight up love. Like love doesn't seem like it
look,
comes.
I'm I don't want to speak, from a person who's had uh, that direct experience, but
Mm,
from what I've seen in my friends' families, is is that the black woman is the mother, is the grandmother, it's the
mm,
storyteller, she's the she's the person who cooks, she's the one who
mm,
nourishes, right?
mm,
She's the one who dresses the kids up and and watches over them. Uh, I don't know. I don't
mm.
know. I don't know why it could be more of a that more of a pure aspect represented there.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I feel like with how the discourse on social media and stuff is like going, that there is more of a an open discussion about how black women have been portrayed in media. I mean, thankfully, in like real life, like you don't have to put up with all of that that's in the media. Even though you know some ideas still trickle down and stuff, but um, I think the media side, I think they are learning, maybe slowly, but I think that's only coming from the fact that there's more. black creators and more black women creators getting into the
Yes,
business
yes,
now.
the showrunners, right? I mean, they're the that's that's they're their own tipping point.
Hmm. Hmm. And that's even also indicative for this movie because Deborah Martin Chase and Whitney Houston were behind this movie. And I don't know if a movie like this could have been made without their idea behind it, like their insistence that this needs to be about a black princess, like and that we need to have like inclusive casting and do all this kind of stuff that not to take away from the other producers that are on this movie because they are also part of this whole deal of inclusive casting, but the fact that those two women in particular were part of this movie, I think that is really what drove home a lot of the themes that the movie has. And I think that's also why it resonates so much uh, with black viewers also because it's like you have black women behind the scenes also making moves about what is going to be shown to black girls, on television. Um, so so yeah, like this uh the movie is very revolutionary. I think is like way before its time. I don't think people realized how revolutionary it actually was at the time.
Mm.
It feels like it's only like grown in its revolutionary aspect by the fact that there's so many shows and well films, productions like Hamilton that are now like using this idea of inclusive casting that I don't think was popular before or even like thought about a lot before. Like I know Denzel Washington was in like Much Ado About Nothing, I think it might have been. Um,
Yes,
and like
I
that all.
love that production, by the way. So he's so good in it. He's so and speaking of Denzel Washington, I mean, in many ways, since I had such few Asian male role models to look up to,
Mhm,
you know, during my time period, it was Lou Diamond Phillips and Russell Wong, uh, because Bruce Lee was like further out, and
mhm,
at the time I didn't know any martial arts, so that's
mhm,
um, associated with that.
mhm,
Um, but my, my biggest, and still to this day, my biggest hero in the entertainment industry was Denzel Washington because he did step over that cross cultural casting line so many times, and he showed it that it was possible.
mhm. And that ability to do that, I think Cinderella capitalized on that, and I think it popularized it to where now, like with Hamilton, people. I feel like people think that Hamilton kind of invented it because it's like the newest thing out right now, but it's like this is before Hamilton, so um, Lin Manuel is not the first one to think about this, and I feel like that's the direction that Hollywood will hopefully go in, and not also to just set it in like period pieces because I know like Mr. Malcolm's List, as good as that movie is, I wonder like there could be like some cultural commentary there. I like it, but I feel like there could have been something, and I feel like that's where the next stage of inclusive casting will go is to like really tackle well what are the things that this character could address if this other person's playing this character because that adds a whole new layer, a whole new perspective, a whole new avenue for like empathy and educating and all this stuff. So I feel like the inclusive casting thing is just going to kind of revolutionize how people think of movies. I hope, anyway.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, it would be so interesting if you created a piece or a project that had that at its core.
Mm-hmm.
That by using that device, you're able to actually say something on a larger macro level that you wouldn't have been able to do if you just gone with regular traditional casting.
Hmm. I
We're
feel
gonna have
like
to call up our writer friends.
right, right. Um, I feel like that could be cool, and so hopefully that's what people will do. Um, and hopefully people see that because Cinderella was so popular and still so popular, that is what people want. Um, because people have been wanting it for a long time. People being me, but I also feel like people being like everyone who is interested in this type of, showing what the world is like, not just what Hollywood thinks it is, or I guess maybe kind of wants it to be in some kind of ways, but what it is actually like and what we should embrace. Um, and uh, I have no segue, so I'll just like skip to the
It's
next.
okay. We can bounce to the next.
One thing I really wanted to know about is Natalie Desselle Reid. I believe she died. Was it last year?
December,
Um,
December of this past year, I want to say. I do know that it was December because it was around, or maybe it might have even been on my mother's birthday,
mm,
like December 7th or December 8th or something like that.
mhm. Um, and she was, I
Yes, and maybe not this past December, the December prior, because she wasn't on our reunion call when it was released on Disney Plus. Is that
right,
right?
right, that's right, that's right.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like she's like one of the unsung heroes of this film. I mean, I feel like she's been an unsung hero throughout a lot of her films, but
Oh my gosh. I mean, she. Okay, you say what you're going to say. I'm going to say what I'm going to say.
well, I was gonna say, her as Minerva was like really it was also kind of representation in a way for me. Like I'm not like a nasty person, but a bigger woman on screen, and she's openly talking about, even though the stepsisters lament is like supposed to be a funny song, it still is kind of relatable because it's like, well, why doesn't he like me? What do I
Yeah.
have? Um, what does she have that I don't have? And so like I recognize that within myself because I'm sure everyone's felt that at some point in their lives, and she really like made that role fun and like funny, even though she's being totally mean and rude. And I just think she's a great comedic actress.
Well, let me just tell you, I'm not. let me just tell you, I'm going to add on to the fact that, hey, like you said, she's just a really great comedic actress. She's also a very smart
Hmm.
comedic actress. She's also a really beautiful comedic actress. And this is like one of those instances where I wish the world had caught up sooner before we lost her.
Hmm.
If you were ever in the room with Natalie Desselle, you look at her face and you look at the face of a gorgeous, beautiful, plus size black
Hmm.
woman.
Hmm.
But she could have been like the African American version of Bridget Jones' Diary.
Oh yeah, she
You
could
know what I
have.
mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? She could have been the leading woman, funny leading woman
Hmm.
of a romantic comedy.
Hmm.
But maybe the industry wasn't ready for it. Maybe there was no script out there for it.
Hmm.
But she had that potential. It wasn't even potential. She already had it in her.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
potential needed to be like presented to her, but she already was it. She already had that. She had that star quality. Um, and working with her was probably one of the hardest things that anyone could do. Even our director, Robert Isco, said in the special, on the reading special, he said, "I would do everything in my power." And this is not just him; this was me too. I said the exact same thing in another interview. Everything in my power to not crack up and
Hmm.
ruin the take when she was in the same scene that I
Hmm.
was in.
Hmm.
she would just do things. She would do things differently every time, and both her and Deanne. That's the thing. It's like they the chemistry between those two. Let's talk about chemistry between Deanne and Natalie. I mean, they couldn't have looked visually more different, but felt more like sisters in spirit. Ah, so great. So lucky to have been to have gotten to work with her and experience that level of comedic genius. Beautiful. What a beautiful soul she was. Such a beautiful soul. That's the best smile. Ah,
Yeah, that is one thing about her character is that you can still see I mean you can't turn off beauty. So like you can still like see that
right?
that she's like a beautiful woman and like her she did have a great smile. And like even though she's playing a mean person, it's like, oh that's she still looks cool. So it's just
Yeah,
like
you still want to hang out with her. You know,
mhm,
she would crack you up. She'd be like the funny. You would want her in every outing that you went, even if she made a couple of like you know remarks here and there. You'd be like, you still like having her around because she makes us laugh and she's cool. She's so cool.
mhm. Well, I think that kind of like gets at a question that I've wanted to ask, which was in the scene that you have with her. Like, first of all, when y'all are in the at the ballroom scene, and she's like yelling, "I want a chance at him!" Like, how is it being within that like in that scene with her and like doing the comedic like dance where she's like trying to tell you poetry and stuff? What was that like?
Well, it's so funny and so smart because the in the particular ballroom scene, it's interesting that Natalie plays against the type of her against her body type, and Vianne plays against her body type, right? So you've got Natalie being like the actual graceful one, and just and stumbling her way through the really confusing poetry that that uh, that she's that she's putting out there. And you have Vianne, who's like the willowy one, who's like actually more violent in the whole process. But it was so much fun. So much fun to do that scene with her because she was also a great dancer too. So the fact that she could do her lines, be funny, and dance at the same time, hit all her marks, you know, gosh, such a great, what a great teacher to be around and a colleague.
Um, I think this brings me to a question that might be difficult. What is your favorite scene from this movie?
Oh, are we talking about the favorite scene that I'm in, or my actual favorite scene slash shot?
Scene in general, whether you're in it or not.
Okay. Okay, my favorite scene, whether I'm in it or not, is the scene where it's the ballroom scene. It's the ballroom dancing scene of 10 minutes ago. All right, let's just say it's the entire 10 minutes ago sequence, because it involves um, getting to sing and dance with Brandy and have that incredible camera work that really makes you feel makes the viewer feel like they're dizzy in love. Um, but later on in that sequence is Rob Marshall's incredible choreography, Ellen Marojnik's incredible costume. By the way, Ellen Marojnik, I hope I'm saying her name right, is also the costume designer for Bridgerton. You know, another like diversely cast show. But so we have that choreography, we've got the costumes, we have the Rodgers and Hammerstein music, we have Disney orchestrations put on top of it, and then you have the most diverse cast of talented dancers from both coasts in the United States, swirling and swooping and they look like fountains.
Hmm.
There's this one part. It's a lift. It's the part where it's like da 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 da, and the men lift the women,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
kind of cross each other,
Yeah.
and it looks like I did like the fountain show at the Bellagio.
Right.
It's so cool. And I know it was made in 1997, but I mean that is like MGM level, MGM Golden
Hmm.
Age musical, level imagery
Hmm.
and music. Can't beat it. Can't
Yeah.
beat it.
That reminds me of a tweet I saw the other day where um, they were like, how did they like choreograph this and color it like it's a 1960s musical? Like this is spectacular. And so that
That's
is what it feels like a Gene Kelly like a golden age style musical. So it's really timeless.
yeah. It's an incredible hat trick that they pulled out.
Um, I have about I have about like I think two more questions or three because
Okay.
I cannot end this without talking about Whoopi Goldberg and Victor Garber and Jason
Mm,
Alexander.
yeah.
Since you shared most of your scenes with them, and Whoopi and Victor were your mom and dad in this. So what was it like working
That's
with all of them?
oh man. It was like working with all of them. It's funny because I have memories of working with them individually, and I have memories of them working together with them as the royal family unit.
Hmm.
And I will cherish both both versions in my mind. Um, so Jason, I had the most scenes with Jason in the entire movie.
Oh,
Didn't
right.
realize that until we started shooting it. I was like, oh, it's you again. I'm in this scene with you again. I was happy to do it because I was a huge fan of Jason Alexander in
Hmm.
Seinfeld. Huge fan.
Hmm.
Huge fan. And then I find out that he not only is he the comic master and actor that he was in Seinfeld,
Hmm.
he's also at this point in my life the most interesting man in the world
Hmm.
because he's a black belt or higher in Jeet Kune Do, which is the martial art that Bruce Lee
Hmm.
practiced. He was a magician in
Hmm.
college. Like he was like a semi-pro professional, semi-professional magician, where that's how he made extra money was like doing magic. uh, and and he was also just like a really incredible mentor without being a mentor. Does that make sense? Like
Hmm.
he didn't
Hmm.
really like I'm gonna mentor you through your first movie. You would joke around and cajole with me and give me little tips,
Hmm.
here and there.
Hmm.
So I'm forever uh, indebted to how gracious he was to me. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. He could have sat in his chair and between takes, but no, he was always there and available if I ever had a question.
Hmm.
I didn't ask too many questions, though. I promise. Um, now, Whoopi Goldberg and Victor Garber. All right, so let's start with Whoopi Goldberg because I actually knew Whoopi Goldberg from her. The first time that I'd seen her work was as a comic,
Hmm.
uh, not live, but on TV.
Hmm.
The first day that she came in, and of course she'd done The Color Purple by now. I'd seen her in that and Ghost, Jumping Jack Flash. I mean, she was already a movie star and very with an incredibly impressive resume. So she walks in uh, to rehearsals. Like, remember when I said that we didn't all show up on the first day of rehearsals?
Hmm.
I want to say that she and Victor came in maybe a week after we started rehearsing.
Hmm. Hmm.
A week or two after we started rehearsing. And I was in a music rehearsal with Paul Bogave, our music director slash supervisor in the studio, and she came in through the door, and she wasn't there for rehearsal. She was just introducing herself. She came in with the producers and I suppose her mini entourage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had to stop rehearsal. I had to stop rehearsal to say hello to Whoopi Goldberg. So uh, do you remember Wayne's World? I don't know if your
Oh,
listeners
yeah, I
remember
remember.
Wayne's World, or
Yes.
if the Wayne's World 2,
Yeah.
like
Yes.
that Keanu Reeves movie. So there's this thing where the two guys say, we're not worthy," and like they kind of get on their knees. So I kind of did that. I was like on the floor. I was like, "I'm not worthy." And you know what Whoopi Goldberg did? You know what Whoopi Goldberg did? She got down on the floor too, on the other side of the room, and then she started rolling toward me. So I started rolling toward her. And so we kind of met in the middle, and we were laughing, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most amazing way to meet a huge star
Mm-hmm.
who's supposed to play your mother, right? Kind
Mm-hmm.
of takes out all the air of being intimidated
Mm-hmm.
by by her. And I don't know if she did that on purpose or if that's just Whoopi,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're around her, and I know a lot of people who've like been interviewed by her on The View, or just know her personally. When you're around her, you she has this powerful sense of being grounded. Like
Mm-hmm.
the closest thing I can refer to it is like Gaia, like Earth
Mm-hmm.
Mother. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? She's that grounded and that aware and sure of herself and authentic
Mm-hmm.
that she inspires you to be your most authentic self
Mm-hmm.
when you're around her too, and hopefully, when you're not around her as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, that was that was great. And then Victor Garber. Victor Garber, I was a huge fan of his because of musical theater, because he's like a musical theater legend,
Mm-hmm.
right? He played Jesus in Godspell, in the Godspell movie, and I played John the Baptist in Godspell in college, so I
Mm-hmm.
saw his work quite a bit, and he also did Assassins, and I love his voice. Victor Garber's voice, he's so. Oh, I'm getting nostalgic thinking about working with these people. They're just so nice. Everyone's so nice, and that sounds vanilla and mundane, uh, but they really were kind people.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have, and this is what I learned. This is what all of these people taught me. The most famous people, for the most part, all right, the most famous people, the people who are at the top of their game, not necessarily the most famous people, but the people who are at the top of their game are usually the nicest
Mm-hmm.
because they have nothing to prove. They
Mm-hmm.
know who they are. They know what they have to offer, and they don't try to take down other people around them to make themselves feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be like that one day.
Well, I mean, I think you already are like that because, like, everyone that I've, uh, and well, in all the interviews that I've read and like everything that I've seen about you online, like everyone's just like, he's just like how he is in the movie. It's just like, um, even me, like I was like, oh my gosh, he's just like how he is in Cinderella. He's like literally this guy, and so just like, I think you're already, uh up there, like being a nice person who is at uh, the top of their game, and being someone who like interviews a lot of celebrities and stuff. It's interesting that you say that because I've noticed that it really does seem like the the people that I guess that you would think would have like would be putting on airs and stuff. Like when you get them in the interviewing room, it's just like, oh, this is like another this is a regular person. Like I can like connect with them and like figure out how to talk with them and have a conversation with them. Even though I only get like 5 to 10 minutes in some of these things, it's still just interesting to see how like, oh, these people, even though they are like at the high echelon of of their craft, they're still people. And so I think that that comes through in your story too. That even though these people were like your idols, they're still people who want to connect with other people, and I think that's really special.
I agree. I agree. But you gotta give yourself some credit there too.
Oh.
Like, you gotta give yourself some credit because there's a huge difference between a good interviewer and a not as good interviewer. I'm not gonna say bad. No one's a bad interviewer.
Mm.
They're just not as talented at it, or they don't. Their personality doesn't encourage you to be transparent
Mm.
or vulnerable, right? And you do. And
Oh,
that's a roundabout way of complimenting.
well, thank you. I think I will end with one final thing. This
Sure.
is a strong pivot, I guess, to another movie that I read that you're in,
Yes.
Asian Persuasion.
Yes, Asian persuasion. Yes, what would you like to know about it?
Well, I would just like to know, like, if you can say, I don't know if there's like spoilers or anything, but like, who how would you describe your character and what can fans expect from the movie?
Right. So the movie is about a down on his luck chef, New York chef,
Mm.
Filipino American chef, played by Dante Bosco from uh, Hook. He played Rufio in Hook, and
Mm.
he's also the voice of Prince Zuko in the Last Airbender.
Mm.
Um, so it's this down on his luck chef who's going through a divorce with his successful clothing designer wife.
Mm.
They share a child who they both love equally. He uh, and the divorce is going through. They actually signed the divorce papers, but part of the divorce is the alimony that he's going to
Mm.
uh, owe his wife. And so he comes up with this scheme when he has like a kind of like a drunken party with his best friend, uh, and he comes up with a scheme to set his wife up with a new husband, so he
Mm.
doesn't have to pay alimony. So he essentially becomes the catfish for his wife's account. So he like makes an account for his wife,
Mm.
and then pretends that he's her and tries to attract all of these suitors. And then once he
Mm.
finds the suitors, he's trying to find the perfect suitor. He enlists the help of that suitor to essentially court the wife so that she falls in love with him. And he,
Mm.
you know, and hilarity ensues. So
Mm.
I'm the suitor. I'm the guy who thinks that I'm going to be actually dating this incredible woman, and it ends up being Dante. And then and I'm like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And then he tells me, yeah, but she's really incredible, and I know that she's your dream girl. And so we go ahead and team up to try and like woo his wife. And I'll leave it at that. And we'll let the audience come pay their tickets and talk about it at the festivals. We will see how it turns out. But it should be coming out. I think they've already made a final cut of the film, and
Mm.
they're submitting it to the festivals starting in September.
Mm.
Uh, and I think they definitely already have some kind of extended distribution deal that happens late 2023, but they want to get something sooner than that and more domestically because that distribution deal is international. So
Mm. Well,
come see it. Asian Persuasion. But the crazy part is that in the original script, my character's name was Lee Kwan Lee Prince. Can you believe that?
Well,
And the writer didn't know who I was. Like
mhm.
he didn't think he didn't write it for me. He just wrote that as the character's name, and he wrote him. He's like this guy's like Prince Charming. He's 47 years old. He's like a Wall Street executive. At the time that I read the script, I was 47 years old. I mean, you want to talk about kismet? Yeah, we had a real blast shooting it, just laughing our heads off the entire time. So please come out and support us and create a little buzz about it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. It's been great. It's been a dream come true.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much, Monique, and thank you for being an example to me.
Oh,
You see, and letting me learn something new today. I appreciate you.
oh, well, thank you. Thank you for listening. Please like the video, subscribe, and please follow me at MoniqueBlogNet on Twitter, as well as ColorWebMag on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I hope you liked the video, and please remember to leave a comment. Thank you.